Greetings, Power Painters. This is Taylor Payton. I just finished up my morning studies, doing some values and drawing and edge studies this week and having a blast. And it just kind of occurred to me that I should make a video just kind of covering the four biggest mistakes I see a lot of beginning artists make. It's just an idea I had while I was working on my study because I noticed the same kind of things keep on recurring and recurring in a lot of artists' work, including my own. And I feel that if we can actively attune our perception to some of these problems that keep coming up, especially when you're a beginner, then we can begin to avoid them and creatively fix them. So these are four of the hugest mistakes I notice, and they're big because they're deal breakers. To me, mastery just means that the mistakes that you make get smaller and smaller and smaller because even masters are making mistakes, right? But the mistakes are so small that they're hard to notice. They're minute. They're some of them are basically subatomic. They're so little, and that's why we call them masters. So on the path to mastery, on the path to getting better in general, you just want to be aware of some of these tactics and techniques and tips that you can use to avoid some of the pitfalls that all of us go through. So I have a little list up on my computer here just because I wanted to write it down, didn't forget anything, and try to go completely off the top of my head because I'm not that good. But let's talk about these four ugly mistakes that beginners make and how to creatively fix them. So, really, the biggest one I see, and the one I see the most, that causes a plethora of other problems is going too fast. So, number one is going too fast. Everybody wants to be so fast. I mean, that's just the age we live in with information available all the time and the digital media and being able to fix mistakes on the fly that we were never able to fix before. The permutations and the thought that go into holding your own in terms of planning and having a nice slow pace and controlling your body, controlling your thinking, really seeing before you actually take an action is kind of getting shoved to the wayside by a lot of the beginners and a lot of the earlier artists, the ones that are just starting out. And even some of the bigger guys go too fast sometimes. And you can definitely tell because there's gaping mistakes. It's stuff that can kind of be deal breakers when it comes to making a good image or the art of picture making. So, the biggest thing I can say in how to creatively fix this one is just to simply check yourself constantly. Like, get into the mental habit of saying, am I going too fast for this part? Am I making lines too hastily? Am I slapping down values without thinking? And all of this stuff basically goes back to making sure that you're only going as fast as your accuracy will allow. And I've said this before in other videos, but I want to just have it cohesively right in the forefront in this video so people can remember it. Because if you slow down, you will get better results. I guarantee it. I don't mean go like a tortoise and make it painfully slow because that's not going to work very good either. I'm saying find that beautiful balance where you can just work at a pace that is consistent and wholesome. All right? Cool. So, mistake number two is not seeing properly or training your artist's eyesight or your perception. So, this one's really big because people think drawing is all about the hand or painting is about just the movements that you're making. But really, it's all about how you see, how you perceive, how you are breaking down shapes, how you're turning edges and getting forms down. You have to train yourself to see like an artist. I mean, Andrew Loomis wrote a book called The Painter's Eye or something like that. I'm not 100% sure at this point because I'm just kind of cruising in the video. But he did talk a lot about perception as far as art goes and being able to not only see the data that we're receiving visually, but to parse it so it doesn't seem so complex. And then when you're able to parse the complexity, then you actually get the ability to organize what's going on in your canvas. So in order to see properly, then you get to start thinking properly again too, because there is sort of a permutation with this stuff. Like I say, guys, there is a process. So it's not just all this magical zoom, 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 zoom. I'm gonna make this gorgeous image, and it's just gonna be like nothing. I mean, you can do that if you're really, really good in delving really deeply into your comfort zone. To be honest, even a master outside of their comfort zone will make some really ugly art if they're going too fast and they're not seeing properly, because your perception as an artist is key. So learn to train your eyes. Here's how you can fix not seeing properly. Well, I mean, hopefully you have glasses if you need those, or contacts or whatever, or you go get your laser eye surgery. But the biggest thing is simply to put your consciousness on your perception, put your consciousness onto what you see. So next time you're on a walk or you're just hanging out in your studio or whatever, then just look at stuff and really break it down. Really pull it into your mental library. There's things you can do with your vision, like if you squint, then you're able to see the shapes and values differently. They become more pronounced. You're able to see the darkest dark and the lightest light. It's just being able to sit there and work on your vision is something that artists don't typically do. It's something they refine over time because not only do you have to see, but you also have to create. So just make sure you work on your vision, practice your squinting, stare at something and really break it down visually, ask yourself questions and give yourself answers in your head because then you're learning and you're not even having to draw at that point. You're just having to bring in the information and practice your sight because your sight is integral as an artist. It's going to allow you to get more believability and to tune your perceptions to constantly increase your rate of success as you're working. So really work on your sight. Now, I talk a lot about working on your site in the beginner's drawing course, which I'm actually really hard at work on right now. It's going to be released on July 20th with a lot of really good info for people who are just getting into art or want even more of a strong foundation to their drawing ability because drawing is everything, even if you're painting. But yeah, I'll talk more about that later. For now, let's get through the rest of these tips. So, the next tip I like to call playing in the mud for too long, which is kind of funny because people will refer to artists' work as muddy, or you noodled too much, or you just didn't have a focus. And this basically gels down to not having a direction while working. And a lot of people think that they're going to just put the pencil to the paper and magic is going to happen or come out, and they're just unlucky or they're having an art block if something is not working. But really, if you're playing in the mud for too long, and you don't decide on a direction after you make all these abstract shapes or motions, then you're just going to end up with a big mess. And like I said before, we talked about parsing the complexity and getting it down so you can actually control the elements on your canvas and tell a cohesive narrative, or at least have some sort of cool abstract thing people can still relate to. But if you play in the mud for too long, you're just going to get ugly results. You're going to get values that don't match up. You're going to have marks that aren't in alignment with one another. You're just going to be breaking the base fundamental golden rule of design. And everything is design. Everything is drawing and design. You're designing what you want on the canvas. And if you're letting things get muddy and not designing how they go together, if you're noodling and just kind of making a bunch of marks and not knowing how you're going to connect them up or create something cohesive out of them, then you're just going to end up with some yucky looking art. 99% of the time. That's kind of just how it is. There are some people who have refined that method so well that they can turn the ugliest mishmash into something gorgeous. And that, in and of itself, I would say, is a whole nother skill set. So if you want to do that, you can. But really, the way to fix this problem is just to have a design in mind. Put a design up here and then project it onto whatever you're working. Even if you make a couple marks to get an idea, just don't noodle for too long, don't lick the canvas and just make marks that have no meaning. Start to have a design and then work to get that vision out so that people can relate to it. It's just kind of how you got to work. You want people to know what you're actually doing. So that's tip number 3 for how to solve the third huge mistake that a lot of artists make. And finally, one of the biggest ones I've seen ever, and I struggled with this for so long, it's just ridiculous, is that they don't want to use reference. And it sounds weird, right? Like some of you are like, of course, use reference, it's great. And others are like, what reference? It's not my art if I use reference, or it's just cheating if I use reference or photos or whatever. But no, that is a perfectly legitimate tactic as long as you're putting your own creative spin on it. Right? It's great to use reference because you're going to get more accuracy, you're going to have information present to you as you're working on your stuff, and it's going to make your job a lot easier. You're going to have a lot more fun. You know, it's great to be able to build your mental library up to the point where you have volumes and volumes of things you can pull from so you know how this specific tree looks, or you could draw a mongoose without looking at one, whatever, right? Um, I don't know why a mongoose, it's kind of amusing, but really the bottom line here is that you want to make sure that you get the visual information that you need available to you when you're working on a piece. Like, so let's say you get stuck. Let's say you're drawing that mongoose and it's just not looking right. And you can tell inside it's not looking right. Like, you got this feeling in your chest. It's kind of gross. It's like, ooh, it just looks more like, I don't, like a weird broken cat than a mongoose. Then, okay, go to Google. Look up a mongoose, study it. If you want to, there's two ways to solve this one really when you're using reference. If you get stuck, you could either stop altogether, so walk away from the piece, do some studies, just really look at some pictures of whatever it is you're stuck on after you identify the problem and just look and absorb that information, look at their shapes, look at their design, look at how they move, whatever it needs to be, and internalize that. Then do a couple practice sketches. Like I said, do the drawing aspect of it because values and shapes and colors and all that stuff comes after the drawing. So get the drawing right. If you can get the drawing right, you've solved the problem. Go back to your piece and solve the problem in your piece. So that is the solving the problem outside of the canvas method. Another method to go is just to pull up a picture right in front of you that is as close to what you're trying to draw or paint as possible. For example, if you're drawing a lady in repose and she's got some like cloth draped over her body in sort of a attractive way, then you just pull up a picture of that and it's as close to how you want to draw it as possible, and you make your own creative fixes by using your mental library or your visual library to fill in the gaps, right? So you're using external reference, you're using internal reference, and you're working on your piece. And that's the second way to solve the not using reference aspect of things. So there you have it, guys. We have all four tips we covered. Let's just do a quick review. Number one is going too fast, and you solve it by giving yourself the habit of mental checking to make sure you're actually going at the pace you need to be going. Number two is not seeing properly or training your sight as an artist, realizing how important that is now. I want you to go out and really look at stuff, break it down, understand it visually, put it in here so you can use it later, okay? And like I said, I talk a lot about that in the beginner drawing course. I talk a lot about all these things in the beginner drawing course. So it's just a really good course. I know I made it, so I'm a big fan. But seriously, there's tons and tons of value. So if you guys want to check that out and you want to enroll and become a student in that, then that's in the description box below the video. But for now, let's keep powering through the review. Alright, so the third big mistake is playing in the mud for too long, which I just like to call not having a design, not having an idea in mind, not having a focus as you're moving forward. So really, once you have those marks down, you get your idea, stick with it. Yeah, you can make little revisions along the way, but get the big idea in your mind so you actually know where you're going. Don't make movements that don't matter, don't lick the canvas, don't noodle, just make things that are going to be in good alignment and good design so that your image works. Cool. All right. So the last one is not using any reference. Now, this is a really bad thing, especially if you're just starting out, because you don't have a lot of a development in your visual library. So you're going to need those extra pictures and like images. Maybe you take a live model. You're going to need some stuff outside of you for a while to make sure that you actually can internalize that information. And once you get comfortable drawing a couple subjects, then you can slowly do away with the reference. But really, it's just so expert to be able to take imagery, break it down, understand it, and repurpose it for your own creative endeavors. All right, cool. So thanks again, guys, for watching this video. I really have a lot of fun making these for you. I feel like these are really good tips, and they would have helped me a lot about 4 years ago when I was taking this seriously. But now the beautiful thing is I get to share them with you, and you can become beautiful, strong artists, and I don't know, surpass the crap out of me. So anyway, it's all in good fun. I have a lot of really cool stuff that I'm working on. Not to mention, like I said, the beginner drawing course. You can check that out in the description box. You can enroll and become a student. It is released on July 20th. It's going to be 8 weeks of assignments and lectures. It's going to be beautiful. So if you're interested, check it out. If not, there will be more free stuff too. I love all of you guys. Happy drawing, happy painting, and remember to fix your mistakes and don't leave them on your canvas. Take care.